So hello everyone, we're going to start our webinar. I'm Ira Понедельник, I'm Climate Project Manager at n-ost, and we continue our series of webinars that we focus on our different topics in in-depth projects that are health, climate change issues, disinformation, and media monetization. So, and today we are going to focus on climate change issues. I'm so happy that we have researcher, IPCC researcher. So we asked our partner media what kind of speakers they want to see, and hopefully it was so complicated to find somebody from our region, but again, I'm so happy that we have some researchers who from our region, or they focus their research on our region of Eastern Europe, Caucasus, and Central Asia. So I'm happy to present you Alisher Mirzabaev. He's senior scientist on policy analysis and climate change at the International Rice Research Institute. So we will start with a presentation from Alisher, and if you will have questions during the presentation, please write them to chat, or after his presentation, you will also have opportunity to ask yourself anything you want. Yes, so Alisher, I give the floor to you. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, Ira. Let me now share my screen and show my slides. I hope now you can see my slides.
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Thank you very much for this opportunity to speak about IPCC and climate change impacts and responses in Eastern Europe, Caucasus, and Central Asia region as they are described in the IPCC reports. More specifically, the latest IPCC cycle reports, sixth cycle report, which were completed by 2023. I was involved in these reports myself in two of them. One where I was something called CLA, coordinating lead author in this climate change and land report on chapter on desertification. And another one was Working Group 2 report. I will talk about this working group, different working groups of IPCC as well, so that you have a clear idea. So here you could see the outputs of these six assessment cycles. So IPCC works in this assessment cycles. So every 5 years, there is one cycle where scientists working on climate change come together, and then they look through the literature available at that time, scientific literature, and then create develop these reports. So in this cycle, there were some special reports: global warming of 1.5 degrees, climate change and land, oceans and cryosphere, so glaciers, ice covered areas, and then also main reports of working group 1, 2, 3, and also synthesis report. Now, okay. So what is the role and principles of IPCC? IPCC does not do its own research, but it summarizes, evaluates available research. But of course, when IPCC highlights some knowledge gaps, and this also triggers research by global community. So the main role of IPCC is to help understand the scientific basis of risk of human-induced climate change, its potential impacts, so projections, and also solutions, what we can do about it, options for adaptation and mitigation through a very rigorous, very well-organized peer review process of the literature with transparency, rigor, robustness, comprehensiveness. And what is important for IPCC, that IPCC reports are policy informative, but not policy prescriptive. So that means when IPCC is presenting its reports or policies, summaries for policymakers, it never says it has to be done, it should be done. No, it says you have these options. If you follow this pathway, you end up with this outcome. If you follow that one, you end up with this outcome according to this available science. So it is informative, but not prescriptive. So So this is the structure of the IPCC. So there is IPCC plenary, which are basically all the parties, countries, and delegations, official government delegations. IPCC bureaus are made up of, for example, the chairs, vice chairs of the working groups, and then IPCC Secretariat in Geneva, which basically helps the everyday running, communication, organization of this kind of media events. Also, often is usually organized by IPCC Secretariat or in collaboration with IPCC Secretariat. But the most of the work happens with working groups. Working group 1, the physical science. So that means working group 1 looks at the what's happening with the climate, projections of changes in temperatures, in rainfall, in extreme. So this is a hardcore natural science part, climate science group. Working group 2 works on climate change impacts, adaptation, and vulnerability. So this is here we have a combination of natural sciences, ecology, social sciences, economics, anthropology, geography. So here it is the impacts. So impacts of climate change on people, on ecosystems, and accompanying issues related to vulnerability and adaptation to these impacts. Working group 2 is about mitigation. So mitigation means preventing climate change, reducing greenhouse gas emissions. And then this working group looks at these aspects of mitigation of climate change. And then there's a task force on national greenhouse gas inventories. It has its own way of doing things. Most of the work that gets of IPCC that gets a lot of attention is produced by these 3 working groups, and as well as the task force. And then you have these authors, contributors, reviewers. All this work, which is done here by authors, contributors, reviewers, is free. I mean, they are not paid, voluntary work. Why I'm highlighting that, I will talk a little bit while we are talking about the process and also relating it to the realities of our region. Okay, now there has been, of course, several cycles. So recently we finished the 6th assessment cycle. So before that, there were in 1990, one cycle which gave a broad overview of climate change science. It triggered discussions about uncertainties and evidence of warming. The one in 95 indicated that on the balance, what's happening with changing climate is a result of human activities. Before that, there was a lot of still discussions. Is it because of some natural factors? Is it because of volcanoes? Is it because of something else? Is it 1995 gave that there is discernible human influence on global climate. So strong, but by 2001, there was new and stronger evidence that most of the warming observed over the last 50 years is attributable to human activities. So the word attributable is very important. So that means there was a very strong modeling statistical work done, and it showed that what the cause of climate change are human activities. And then 2007, this word unequivocal came, which means that there is absolutely no doubt that climate change is happening, warming is happening, and humans are a cause for that. There has been many, so this triggered a lot of discussions. For example, the last one, 2013 assessment cycle, basically was helped a lot in terms of reaching the Paris Agreement, which is now serving as the fundamental basis for international climate action. Now, how this IPCC process is organized. So first, there is this plenary together with all these country representatives. There is something called scoping. This is when the idea of the next report is discussed. So what would be the topic of the report? What are the table of contents? What elements need to be covered in that report? So that's kind of scoping. and then approval of the outline by countries, official delegations. And then each country and also observing organizations, observers, can nominate authors. I think this is this part is very important for our region, and this has been an area where our countries, in general, not all of them, some are quite active, some are not that much active, but in general were less active than other countries around the world, especially from Western Europe or North America, or so industrialized kind of countries. So nomination of authors is very important, and in this regard, I think national focal points for IPCC, national organizations which are focal points for IPCC, need to play a very important role in terms of nominating people, and not only nominating those people that they know, but through some kind of very process where they could nominate the best in the countries to this, and then IPCC selects those authors. For example, usually you could expect maybe several hundred nominations coming from, say, Germany, and then maybe out of these 10, 15, or so maybe 10%, 5% are selected for the entire process. Sometimes you could see that many of our countries even did not nominate any author to this process. So it is one crucial area where we could engage more, and I think that there are now positive changes are happening. And then once these authors come together, they're selected, they start working on the reports. And this report goes, once they have some a good draft, first order draft, it goes to expert review. That's another place where we need to engage, and where engagement is not that strong. So what does it mean? Engagement means this draft report is sent out to all countries asking for suggestions, comments, so comments, basically, comments, critical comments. Maybe there is something, there is a mistake, maybe something is missing, there is some. So scientific review process is very important. So when I was part of this, when I was coordinating lead author for the desertification chapter in the climate change and land report, for that chapter alone, we got maybe at this stage, maybe around 1,000, 2,000 comments, 1,000, 2,000 comments for a chapter of maybe 40 pages. And desertification is very important for our region, and I didn't get any comment. There was no one from Central Asia, Caucasus, commenting on that report. And then it's not related, but sometime back, I also talked with focal points asking, okay, it's very important that there is this comments are given to these reports. Why this is not happening? And I said, oh, when we ask people, why don't you comment? They say, how much will you pay for this? I mean, this is not how this usually this works. This is a review process usually free of charge, but I understand the realities of the situation. But so this is something perhaps where we expert community in the region needs to engage. The same thing at the second stage, second order draft, where governments need to comment there as well. I mean, I didn't see governments from our region commenting these reports. In my personal experience. And then once it is all these comments, we are talking about maybe several dozen thousands of comments. So this land report got altogether 30,000 comments, working groups, and each of these comments are addressed. It's not that you cannot ignore none of these comments. You don't have to take them into account. I mean, you don't have to agree with them. That's what I need to say. They don't have to agree with them, but you need to show clearly, give a response why you don't agree with that, what is the scientific basis, and give clear proof of your action based on that comment. So every comment, each of these 30 or 40 or 50,000 comments are addressed, are replied to And you can also see in the IPCC website the responses to these comments. Approval science. So I will accelerate because we have, I'm just talking about the process. There is also some substantive part of the presentation. So approval, government review, and then final draft. And then based on the final draft, there is something called SPM, Summary for Policymakers. And this is where the delegates come again. And then there is this approval process when they go word by word. Believe me, it's comma by comma. Comma can make a difference for some countries. I was personally in some of the discussions when countries were fighting for hours in order to change whether do we say clean energy or cleaner energy. So ER, cleaner energy. So each of these SPMs, when you read, these are the outcomes of huge debates by the country delegations, official delegations, and often a result of consensus. But the role of IPCC and IPCC authors is to make sure that the science which is presented in those policy summaries is still solid. It's not turned into some kind of political thing. No, one can nuance the language, but underlying science needs to be there and needs to be and stay solid. So what does this report say? Can you hear me well? Because I just want to check. My internet connection sometimes is shaky. Can you hear me well?
Everything fine.
Okay.
We can see you and hear you. Yeah.
Great. So current trends are incompatible with a sustainable, equitable world. So these were the key messages of the last cycle report. More than a century of burning fossil fuels, unsustainable energy use, and unsustainable land use has led to global warming of now 1.1 degrees, resulting in more frequent and more intense extreme weather events. So when you hear this 1.1 degrees, is it a lot? People talk about, okay, why we should care about 1.5 or 2 degrees? It sounds like, I mean, when temperatures in Central Asia, for example, in summer go to 40, 45 degrees. So 1 degree doesn't make a big, it does make a huge difference. The difference is between life and death, between survival of ecosystems, survival of entire islands, and so on. So because these 1.5 degrees are on average at globally, and look, it already triggers a lot of these changes, but local changes are a lot more than this 1.5 usually. But this is very important. So the difference between 1.5 and 2 degrees, there is a special report on that, is already huge. So when you hear, I mean, don't get the impression that, okay, 1.5 does, 2, it's very small. It doesn't, no, it matters a lot, actually. And we can see from this, this is observed temperature. So on top, you can see the map with observed mean temperature changes across in this rectangle across the region. All across the region, you can see it's red. Somewhere redder, darker red, somewhere lighter red, but everywhere average temperatures are increasing. And what is more, temperature extremes are also increasing. So those extreme hot days, number of heat waves, extreme hot days has already increased. So when you say observed, it means they looked at the past data, and this is observed. The same thing for precipitation. It is a little bit kind of precipitation is always a lot trickier than temperature. Temperature, you have a lot, pretty much deterministic kind of models, which higher greenhouse gas effect and more temperature, higher temperature. Precipitation is different. It's a lot more difficult and a lot more heterogeneous effects. In some places, it has increased. In some other places, it has decreased. But what we can also see that extremes are increasing. So frequency, number, intensity of droughts are increasing. At the same time, frequency, intensity of floods are increasing in some other areas. Yeah, or maybe in the same areas as well. So the system is undergoing this kind of movement towards extremes. And what the projections, so projected means future, projections show that this will intensify. Increasing temperatures will continue, increasing, rising, but mean temperature increase, smooth mean temperature increase is not as harmful as this extreme temperature changes. So mean is not the only element there. With mean temperature increases, you can see that extreme temperatures, so extreme hot days, heat waves, are also increasing. Yeah, so that's where the bulk of the damage would be happening. The same thing with precipitation. 1% on average, if you see 1%, 2% change, increase or decrease, that is something one can handle. But when you are talking about extreme precipitation changes, so very big droughts, mega droughts on one hand, or floods, too much precipitation and floodings, destruction of property and loss of lives because of that. So that's kind of a effect that is hiding behind this average temperature precipitation changes. One of the important aspects for the region are, of course, water resources. And in many countries of the region, particularly in Central Asia, in the Caucasus, glaciers play an important role for availability, for access to water resources. And the area of these glaciers are decreasing. Of course, there are some differences between certain mountain ranges. In some, it's happening faster. In some others, it's happening slower. What does it mean? It means that when glaciers are melting away faster at the beginning, you have more water. So it could be good or bad. It could be good because then you have more water for irrigation, for other activities. It could be also bad because this melting is happening during early spring. So it's causing a lot of this floods. But imagine until now, glaciers were some kind of a mechanism to balance water flow across seasons, across the year. So they would melt slowly, and then they would still release more water during summer. And then this is the time when we need water for irrigation. And this is somehow nature was balancing itself in this way and helping up with our human agricultural activities. But if glaciers have melted away completely, so that means there is not this kind of buffering effect. So instead of snow or forming of the ice, rainfall falls directly, and then it's immediately washed downstreams, and then it causes floods. But then during the winter, during the summertime, there is no this kind of flowing of water from glacier melting anymore. Of course, one can build a lot of reservoirs, but they have all their own costs. Heat waves, droughts, fire risks. So heat waves are becoming more frequent. And this is also a big effect, not only on crops, because a lot of the discussion about climate change impacts was until last decade or until recently was about agriculture. So what is the effect on agriculture, on these sensitive sectors? But now we see clearly that these heat waves are having direct effects on other sectors of the economy as well, on humans as well, not only crops, but also humans. And this has also very social inequality effects. For example, imagine Berlin or Bonn or other German cities, or even our cities, Kiev, Tashkent, Almaty. So when a heat wave happens, those who are richer, they can afford air conditioning, and they will feel better. But what about the poor, especially old, senior people, those who are suffering with chronic illnesses? So that's already causing a lot of, last year, if I remember correctly, they estimated that in Nature, so a very respected international magazine, a journal, scientific journal, Nature, an article there, 73,000 people across Europe died because of heat waves last year, I think. So if this is happening in very high income context, you could imagine that probably this kind of things, human toll, we are already experiencing across our region, but perhaps statistics are not capturing that very well yet. Fire risk, forest fires or rangeland fires are becoming also more frequent because of these heat waves, droughts, and their combinations. Dust storms, particularly relevant for Central Asia because it's also related to land use changes and the climate desertic, but also the desiccation, drying up of the Aral Sea. So their intensity and frequency is increasing. I don't know if you visit a lot Central Asian cities or capitals. It was absolutely something unimaginable, very rare that a dust storm would happen in Tashkent or Dushanbe. One would have been used to have that in near these areas near the desert locations, like near Aral Sea, Kızıldağ, or Karakalpakstan in Uzbekistan. But having it way to the east in Dushanbe, Tashkent, Almaty, these dust storms, that's becoming a reality nowadays. Every year in summer and other times, you can see this happening. Or effects of floods, like causing also displacement, infrastructure damage, yes, but also human toll, human displacements, forced migrations, like especially in those areas which are prone. For example, here we are talking about floods, Tajikistan, Kyrgyzstan, but also some parts of Russia, as we can see from these examples on the slide. So now we can say that scientific advances have resulted in an improved understanding of what the future will look like because of these climate change effects. And now we have also the choices to make, which will help us to better adapt and even more so mitigate, avoid some of these dangerous climatic changes. But for that, we need to have urgent action, effective action, and equitable action. So equitable means which is fair and just to reduce emissions and adapt to climate change. And it's not only about human survival, but also about survival of ecosystems, of biodiversity, survival of fauna and flora, and many, all these social and natural ecosystems taken together are getting impacted by climate change. For example, water crisis in Central Asia is already a very water scarce area. Droughts are increasing in Caucasus, in Eastern Europe as well. As in some locations across the region, there is groundwater over extraction, especially if this is coming from fossil aquifers, so those which are not sufficiently renewed every year, then it leads to the loss of these groundwater resources. Precipitation changes, to the extent that there is also some broad literature linking water scarcity to conflict potential, especially in the context of Central Asia, but not only. In Eastern Europe, this report, the evidence shows that talks about projected increase in pluvial, so rain, pluvial flooding. So a lot of rain, and then it's causing flooding at global warming of 1.5 degrees and 2 degrees. And this is with high confidence. So IPCC has this kind of language, medium confidence, high confidence. What does it mean? So medium confidence means that scientists looked at the literature, maybe they looked through, say, hundreds of papers, and then 70% of them clearly showed that this is going to be increase in flooding, and then remaining 30% perhaps were not sure, did not find that, or found the opposite. Yeah, so this is medium confidence. But when you see high confidence, so that means 90% of scientific evidence papers point to that, and only maybe 10% which did not find that. Yeah, so this is kind of language. It is there is quantitative statistics behind it. Projected decrease in river floods at global warming, and a projected increase in fire weather. So that kind of dry weather with droughts heat waves which are causing this, which will be causing these forest fires or rangeland fires. So they will increase. I talked about Aral Sea, drying up of the Aral Sea already causing a lot of microclimatic impact changes. In addition to that, Central Asia is also affected by huge land degradation, both grasslands and croplands. And here it's very difficult to say, oh, this is happening because of climate. No, a big part of that is happening because of human activities. And climate change is amplifying, increasing those effects. And right now, according to estimates, Central Asia is losing the equivalent of $6 billion every year because of land degradation, caused not only by climate change, but also a combination of human and climatic activities. But of course, climate change, we know that we could also say it's human caused. Water crisis. So downstream, upstream linkages will become a lot more tense. Rain-fed agriculture. So our region has such a variety of agricultural contexts. Many areas with irrigated agriculture, but also huge areas with rain-fed agriculture. So increasing rainfall variability will have a very negative impact on agricultural productivity in those locations. There was, let me mention that was this story, and still you can see this from time to time that, okay, if there will be some slight warming, it will be good for some parts of Eastern Europe because it will increase agricultural potentials. For example, there was that discussion that, okay, with this Black Sea region, Ukraine, Russia, parts of Kazakhstan, which are now global baskets for wheat, for grains, they will benefit because there will be better conditions, a little bit warmer temperatures would be good for them. And we could. There is also the idea that if there will be warmer temperature, agricultural production could be expanded north to the more northern areas. On average, it sounds like a kind of good idea, but not in reality. So in reality, a lot of that will be coming with extreme weather variability. 1 year, too much rain, 1 year, drought. On average, it may be better, but average temperature in a hospital is not very helpful. So it's not given that climate change will lead to these positive effects, even in those areas which before we believed that there may be some positive effects. So what will be the future? I'm accelerating because I see we need also some time for discussions. Reduce climate risks, adaptation, reduce. We need to do more for adaptation, invest more in adaptation. More actions for reducing greenhouse gas emissions. So it's mitigation, enhanced biodiversity approach. So not only for humans, but also for nature, and achievement of sustainable development goals. So this combination of all this gave the idea of climate resilient development, which was emphasized in the 6th assessment report. So the type of development which helps us with adaptation, with mitigation, with having nature-friendly development, but also achieving sustainable development goals. And then the good part about all this is that solutions are available. It's not that we don't know what to do. Solutions are available. We have so many water-saving technologies. We have so many practices which are good to have, good to apply, even now, with or without climate change. But with climate change, they will serve as a very good adaptation options. It increases, for example, around water. When we are talking about transboundary water systems, transboundary rivers, it would require a lot of cross-boundary adaptation and collaboration. So high efficiency water-saving technologies, they're available, but they're outscaling. So their application on large-scale areas requires a lot of investment. And then a lot of the discussions so far, I think, was about adapting agriculture, adapting rural areas, adapting nature. What about urban areas? And I think this is now shifting. As far as I understand, in the next assessment cycle, IPCC will be producing also a special report dedicated to urban areas. And the impacts of climate change on urban areas are huge, important. And what is also clear that a majority of people in the world now live in urban areas. So we need to understand better and also have a lot more adaptation mitigation actions in urban areas. Well, a lot of the greenhouse gas emissions happening in urban areas as well. So it makes a lot of sense to also have a lot more focus on adaptation mitigation in urban areas. For example, nature-based solutions for urban areas. I personally think our cities would benefit a lot from that. So instead of having all this asphalt and cement and all these constructions all the time, combine this with green and blue infrastructure. So trees and parks and everything. So that I think needs to be part of the urban design, architecture, planning in our region a lot more than it is now. Another solutions is about diets. So there was a lot of discussion, especially in the media at the beginning, saying that, when IPCC said, we need a diet, changing diets is one way we can adapt and we can mitigate. Because a lot of these food systems, so because we need to eat, our need to eat is responsible for about 30% of greenhouse gas emissions. Yeah, 1/3 of greenhouse gas emissions is coming from the food systems. And then in many countries, there is overconsumption of those items which are very, very heavy in terms of their carbon footprint. Their production releases a lot of greenhouse gas emissions. So IPCC is not saying that we all should become vegetarians. No. What IPCC said based on the assessment of the scientific evidence, that if everybody consumes healthy diet, so that means if someone is consuming too much meat, they could bring it down to healthy levels. If someone is consuming too little meat, about 2 billion people around the world, especially women, have problems with lack of iron in their blood, so anemia. And meat would, in many contexts, would provide the best source of iron. So in some contexts, that means increase meat consumption. But bringing to healthy levels globally, that will be one of the important contributions to climate change mitigation. It will not solve the problem. Let's be clear about that. It will not, changing diets, if everybody is a vegetarian, climate change, we will not solve it only by that, but it will make a sizable contribution. And in this kind of action, climate action, every little action matters. Every little things contribute something. So shifting healthier, it's not only about mitigation, but also about our health. So instead of carbohydrates, instead of meat or fatty products, if we consume more vegetables, fruits, nuts, this is good for nature. This is good for us. Unfortunately, because of the agricultural priorities, now we should also say that healthy diets are unaffordable. If you want to have a healthy diet, that costs a lot more than having a diet based on junk food, because of the prevailing policies made some sort of calories very cheap, and micronutrients are now quite expensive. So there is a need to now. Okay, IPCC. I'm a little bit walking away from IPCC. I'm perhaps adding a little bit of my own thinking. IPCC would not be prescriptive. Yeah. But IPCC would say that changing towards healthier diets will benefit both mitigation, but also our own health, reduce health costs, improve our labor productivity, and so on. And then this adaptation needs to be systemic. It's not only this sector, that sector, but entire economy needs to come up with measures about this both adaptation and mitigation. Now, let me talk a little bit about climate change knowledge gaps in the region. High resolution local modeling projections of climate change. So those maps are based on global models. And For many parts of our region, those projections may not be as accurate as they could be if there was more detailed local data and more detailed local modeling supporting that. Global community also would not perhaps be doing very high resolution modeling for the region. Imagine if we want to have a very high resolution modeling of projections of climate change, let's say not for every 8-kilometer pixel, rectangle of, which is huge area, but maybe for every 100 hectares of land, which is actually the scale where farmers can do something about all that. Then it requires local modeling capacities. Big part of the research is done on natural sciences. That's okay, that's very good. But very little research is done on socioeconomic and behavioral aspects of climate change. When I looked at Central Asia, so 95% of research was done on natural sciences and only 5% on social sciences. That's I think that's a very big distortion. We need to know a lot more better about social, economic, human impacts of climate change. Losses and damages. Now there's a lot of discussion about this losses and damages fund. There's a lot of discussion that, okay, this is a flood, this drought is because of climate change. But in order to be able to attribute this to climate change, we need to have a local capacities. Scientists can actually work on that and do research those topics and present their findings in a very rigorous way. So capacity building in that area, so loss and damages. And also, there is a lot of scope for outscaling, applying those actions, which are so-called no-regret actions, which are good for mitigation, adaptation, and they are good also at the current climatic conditions anyway. For example, sustainable land management. I know conservation agriculture, no-till, zero tillage is considered to be a climate smart practice, and it's already practiced in many parts of the region, Ukraine, Kazakhstan, Belarus, parts of Russia. So I think there's a lot of scope to outscaling these practices as well. Scaling up climate finance is crucial for enabling this development. So global community promised $100 billion for adaptation, but that sum has not been reached. I think, as far as I remember, it was 80 billion last, according to the information I read somewhere. So there is a scope for increasing this climate adaptation part, and also there is a need for increasing investment not only on the mitigation but also adaptation side. Fairness, climate justice, inclusivity. So these are the important elements. As I said, with the example on heat waves. Maybe upper classes or rich parts of our societies who are actually generating up to 80% of all this, or 90% of all this greenhouse gas emissions, they will have the means to adapt. They can buy air conditioning for heat waves. But what about those poor who are actually, even in Western Europe, you would imagine that with high levels of spending, even there, the poor parts of the society are not really contributing much to greenhouse gas emissions. So it is usually a very rich parts of the society which contribute the lion's share. So when we say prioritizing fairness, climate justice, inclusivity, we mean that we need to make sure that those poorer layers of the society, poorer countries have sufficient support to adapt to climate change. Okay, I think these were my slides, and I'm looking forward to our discussion. I'm stopping my share and going back to the room.
Yeah, thank you so
I hope there were not too many disruptions because
no, everything was fine. So perfectly, we saw you and listened you well. Yeah, thank you so much for your insights. I think that we usually have a lot of presentations about the region from different experts, but you do like really a great job to put everything together, and Eastern Europe and Central Asia and Caucasus. So people who just come to our webinars, they can definitely see. I have actually one one comment and one question before we will start with questions from the participants. Okay, we have 3 already. So, I mean, my first question, first comment that I also agree with you that it's so complicated to find, yes, like experts or even researchers in IPCC or even different others assessment processes. For example, I participate in GEO7, and actually, like we have only 2 people from central, like from EECCA region. So it's like really, I see a big problem. And actually, it's also a question. For example, you told that people can comment IPCC reports. Is it like available link for everybody? Because, for example, in Belarus, I'm pretty sure that our ministry and Focal Point never will share this link with experts because, I mean, for political reason. But is it available for everyone?
Yes, anybody can comment, make comments to that report. So it's not only scientists. I remember I was getting a lot of comments from civil society, NGOs. The role of the focal points is that they know all this scientific institutes, universities, and people, and they would. The idea is that they would immediately distribute it to those most relevant audiences. But the link itself is on the IPCC, usually on the IPCC webpage. Anybody can just access and give comments.
Yeah, it's really, really cool. Yeah, because I see that it's also a problem in our regions that we sometimes, for languages problem or etc., have cannot find. But we have experts, but they cannot actually reply to those. But I hope that everything will be changed soon. Yeah. So my first question will be: do journalists often talk to you about your research, and during your participation in IPCC assessment process, can you talk to journalists about your participation and your research to disseminate the process and like your activities?
Yeah. Of course, I can talk about my own research anytime to journalists, and I often do. But during the IPCC process, I cannot talk to journalists about what is happening in the IPCC. Yeah, inside with those reports. This is something which is because one of the reasons is that the reports, imagine this is like evolving document, live document. They are every comment, they are a little bit changing. So imagine 30,000 comments one round. So anyway, that would be kind of premature to start talking about something which is not there yet and discussing it. So this is usually not done. But once the report are released, then so many journalists approach me, can you talk about the report? Can you explain what does it mean? So that kind of thing happening. And also IPCC does a lot of media outreach events. Actually, if you follow during the day of the release of reports, there are so many interviews happening wherever it's done. So it's but not during the process of writing.
I see. Okay, thank you. So we have a question from representative of Friday for Future. Actually, how do you see the role of youth in participation of IPCC process, and are there any like fellowship for young researchers maybe open, distributed, and we can participate in the process?
Yes, exactly. There is, in IPCC got this Nobel Prize, I think in 2006 or something like that. And they put the money to a scholarship fund. And after that, also, I think this is kind of refilled or something like that. I don't know exactly, but at least was some. Every year, IPCC announced the scholarship program for young researchers. One just needs to check, and I was participating myself in the selection in a couple of years. So, you definitely young researchers need to check the IPCC website and scholarship for that. Second way to engage would be there is something called a role called chapter scientist. Okay. Usually, this is done by young postdocs. Young researchers. So in my case, when I was CLA, there were 2 chapter scientists, young people one from University of Bonn, one from Malaysia. Actually, I think at some extent their travel was covered by even their governments or something like this. But they were providing input as chapter scientists. They were not authors, but they were helping with organizing the chapters, responding to organizing the comments. This kind of work where they could provide their support to the activities. But also there is no reason why not young scientists can directly participate as authors to the report. There's a selection process, yeah. So nowadays, I know a lot of young scientists who already have a lot of publications in journals and so on, so they already can have the expertise to contribute to the process.
Okay, thank you so much. So we have a question from Sabine. Do you have an overview? What have been the main issues of Central Asian, Caucasian countries at COP28, and have they at least partly been met? Do you know something about it?
No, no, I'm not. What I'm glad is that Central Asian countries had a pavilion in Dubai. So that was good. It's true that it was funded by GIZ, I should say also. But still, there were a lot of sessions around the topics related to Central Asia happening there. I did not participate in the COP, but I presented virtually in one of the side events there. So I'm glad that, and next COP will be in Baku.
Yes.
Yeah. So this is the region where it needs to shine and show the leadership, global leadership for climate agenda. So that's, I think, also a good opportunity for Russian-speaking and also broader this region to engage more with the COP process.
I also want to comment to this question. I just checked, is there like any review? Because I was at COP and yes, I was definitely engaged in these processes with Central Asian countries. I will ask Alexei Kokorin. He is also Nobel Prize winner of this IPCC issue. He's originally from Russia, but he's like expert right now in Central Asia. So I will ask him and maybe we can share his inputs. So Sabine, I will definitely, be with you in contact. Tira, I also have your question, but you will be the next one, and you can also do it with voice. And I also have a question from Natalia. Which solution was mentioned as positive experience in Ukraine, Kazakhstan, Belarus?
Yeah, no-till agriculture. No-till, so usually we do this when you plow the land, do a lot of tillage, and then it releases carbon. And but then there is now pretty well-established practice of conservation agriculture, no-till or reduced tillage. So you directly seed the crops and then soil stays undisturbed. There is practices, mulching, so-called, you leave the residues on the surface, and then it helps to retain carbon on the ground. It helps with moisture, so that's a kind of a very climate smart practice. I think I'm definitely wrong, but last information I got some time back, it was something like 6 million hectares in northern Kazakhstan, millions hectares in Ukraine, Russia. So that's a pretty big thing.
Thank you. Yes, and I give floor to Tira. It's our wonderful climate journalist from Georgia. Tira, you can ask your question.
Yes. Yeah. Do you hear me well?
Yes.
So thank you very much first of all to you for organizing this and to Alisher for his very interesting presentation. My question is for a journalist is about data. You mentioned data several times, and I have a very important question about, actually I was writing it now at the moment. There is a substantial lack of data in countries like Georgia. It's very hard to find really good data, for example, to connect climate change to health, because I've been trying to do it and it's very hard to make it. And it's like very hard to get to people to make them understand that it's really about them. So the first question is about data. And then you mentioned that you addressed some countries for commenting from Central Asia and Europe. Did you address anyone from Georgia, especially the government, from the government, or did I get the question right? I don't know, I'm not sure, because my question is whether you addressed the government of Georgia and what was their reaction in terms of supplementing the data that maybe you lacked. And two small questions about cement production, which is increasing in Georgia, and also how to like connect the women's health and climate. Yeah, sorry, too many questions, but maybe in short. Thanks in advance.
Thank you very much. I think these are great questions. Data is very important, especially for our region. And historically, it's not, the key problem is not lack of data, especially climate data, but their lack of availability. Yeah? For example, when I did my own PhD on climate change impacts in Central Asia, 400 weather stations across the region. So it's totally covered. And then you have the data starting from 1885 or something like that. So, but to get that data, I spent such a huge effort because I was lucky someone had already that database. I was able to get it. But if you go to the meteorological services, meteorological agencies, they don't give you the data like that. Some want to sell. But
no, I mean, it's not available since the Soviet times. Like many data started to the country stopped to collect the data because of the socioeconomic situations. I have many experience in that. So there is a real lack of data. So these stations don't function, etc. So I won't continue to comment.
One solution to that would be there is now something called global reanalysis products. So they use satellite data in combination with local weather stations, and some of them are pretty good, like for rainfall chirps or data set, or for temperature. So one could use them. Of course, it's not 100% accurate for every location, but if it is highly correlated with actual weather patterns, 95–80% correlation, then when you are analyzing them and you want to find out how these climatic changes are affecting, for example, women's health, then relationship you can still find that relationship, because as long as the correlation is high, you will be able to capture that. This is one kind of shortcut I could suggest. In terms of the government participation from Georgia, at least in the report that I was involved in, I do not remember having a comment from Georgian colleagues.
Thank you. And what about cement production in short, if you can comment on that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have much I didn't do any research on that topic. I don't know that, but of course, cement production is an important greenhouse gas emission source. And if, I mean, governments in their national NDCs have pledged certain reductions. So they need to be aware what are the key sources, and then they need to probably stick to their commitments. And it's also a big role for civil society, for media, to make sure that to highlight this kind of inconsistencies between what is in the commitments in these national documents and what is in the reality.
Yeah, thank you so much. And thank you so much, Tira, for your questions. Also, one more question. Does learning data science could help young researchers? Yes, maybe you can share your insights.
Of course, nowadays, data science is the great area, artificial intelligence, deep learning, all this program, and young scientists, especially in our region, will have absolute amazing advantage if they learn these approaches, learn Python programming, learn all these things, because once they do that, it's not only for research. I mean, they will have a lot of business and career opportunities as well. So it's something that is definitely is already big, and it's going to be even bigger in our region as well.
Thank you. Yes, so if you have any questions, please write now, because yes, we plan to have it for 1 hour. I just want to share with you our call of our project in depth. So we encourage you to participate if you are journalists, especially from Belarus, Armenia, Georgia, and Ukraine. But if you from other countries, but you have partner from those 4 countries, please apply. The deadline is already on 21st, but you still have time, and maybe you just listen to Alisher, and also, I see that we have a lack of nice solution stories. So maybe it's your time to write some nice stories with solution journalists, for example. And regarding urban things, yes, I also saw that they, like IPCC, now try to find researchers. So it's already passed, the deadline already passed, but yeah, for urban research. So we had webinar regarding cities and adaptation last December. So I will share with our participants recording. So you can definitely also contact and be in touch with those experts. Okay, so I don't see any questions. So let's finish here. And thank you so much, Alisher, for your participation. Again, it was really nice. And I hope that everybody received something new and a lot of knowledge. Yeah, thank you so much. And we will continue already on 20th of January with our next webinar. So I will also share with our participants registration for next webinar. Thank you so much and have a good day. Yeah, thank you. Bye-bye.
Goodbye. Thank you.